Welcome to That RPG podcast, where every great adventure starts with a single idea.
I'm DQ, your friendly neighborhood GM.
I'm Courtney Staples, and the sunlight burns.
I'm Johnny Law, and I'm enjoying brief moments of warm weather.
And I'm Charlie. I'm glad spring is here.
So, special guest today, Charles Ferguson-Avery, who is a very prolific artist. We're just going through your bibliography, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're finding more zines, and just things just kept popping up.
Tell us about Feral Indie Studios and your partnership with Alex and how this all began.
Oh boy. Okay, so I gotten out of art school. I got a kind of like decent office job that at the time was one of the best jobs I ever had. I have no complaints about it. I was working at a newspaper. So I worked for the Lancaster Farmer. And while I was there, I was still like, I was shopping my portfolio around, and I stumbled into the OSR scene. I immediately fell in love with it, not only in the sense of kind of the philosophy of it, even though like it is constantly sort of changing and shifting, and like, what it's about is like now seeing it like every 5 years, it sort of like changes a little bit. But the part I love the most is that it wasn't about this big polished finished product. It was about, I have a really cool idea, almost in the sense of like art. I want to put it out there and see if people like it. One of my favorite artists is actually Scrap Princess. She just puts together these like horrible hacked together like illustrations. I think Veins of the Earth, and you can definitely see how I was inspired by Veins of the Earth in Into the Weird and Wild. But from there, I've been talking to like one of my colleagues, Alex, who's actually in the room with me. And we had got to talking. We decided to do some zines together. And then before long, we started working on, I think, more zines together, and then a book. And then they moved in, and somewhere along there, we started using like Feral Indie Studio as the logo. But really, it was just kind of like a slow, organic process of let's make this together. Oh, let's make this together. Oh, we should do this convention together. You know what? Let's put this book together. And now all of a sudden, we are standing up on stage at Gen Con, accepting a silver ENNIE. That's how it happened. It was just kind of year by year, things grew into what they are now.
How have you nurtured that relationship with Alex this whole time? Because that's working pretty closely with someone creatively can create burnout, it can create friction. Like, how did you keep the relationship fresh?
Just being like good friends. Part of it really does have to do with like, not only being a good creative partner, but also being just a good roommate. If someone is going to take the time to kind of like check in on you and realize they might not be up to doing the dishes, or, maybe that's just like the last thing on their mind, so you take care of the dishes, that's going to help things, in the house, in the kitchen, so on and so forth. And just taking that and applying it into the creative stuff of like, you're pretty burnout right now with like the commissions that you're doing right now. So like, I'll take over this like writing for you. And then inevitably down the line, when I'm tired or sick or whatever, you'll probably hop in too. And that has just always been how we've worked together. I'm very grateful. I'm very thankful. And I am lucky that I've been able to have that kind of relationship.
No Cosmo tips,
No, God, no. No, it's work. It's labor. That's what it is. Like,
how has your surroundings infected and inflicted and inspired your work? Namely living in Lancaster and just Appalachia in general. I mean, obviously you did the Appalachian Gothic.
I would say everything has in some way or another. I want to say like it was during COVID, ZXCU, one of the creators of Thousand Islands, said in an interview that he writes about home. He writes about where he is from. And I kind of like took that to heart from that point on, where like, okay, I don't live next to the ocean. We're writing a book about oceans right now, but I do live in a like pretty tight-knit community. And I have watched as sort of like the weird like spider web of like, they know him, he knows her, so on and so forth down the line. It kind of turns into this like sort of like weird, interesting political web. And that made it into like the ocean book of these like sort of tight-knit communities sort of on like various fringes, forming these intricate, complicated, and ultimately messy little like political webs. Throw in the fact that the book we're writing right now is kind of all about the end of the world happened and then the sun rose the next day. I do think a lot of us are going to be kind of writing about like COVID and so on and so forth and this is how we're writing about it. I would say maybe not Lancaster County specifically, like as in with like the carriages and the Amish and the shady maple breakfast buffet, but in the dirt, in the trees, in the people, in the way people act. That is what has influenced me a lot.
I want to segue from that a little bit into the work itself. The stuff that I've seen, at least what I've seen in Cess and Citadel, which I have over here, and then all the other ones that I was exploring, I'm like, why didn't I buy this one when I was at your booth? Or why didn't I buy that one? But the pink is what got me. But the question I have is, these settings are like super evocative, super gonzo. The ones I've encountered, at least. So understand that you have your background is pulling into this a little bit. How do you go from an idea that's forming? What sparks it, and what's the inspiration that gets you from some crazy idea, some crazy gonzo idea, to it evolving into a zine?
I mean, I'll be blunt, 14 pages worth of stuff. So you have the idea, and then like using like then you just map out like what each of the pages are going to be. For the early version of Vast in the Dark, when it was just like the singular zine, that was like, okay, big, scary, brutalist hellscape that just goes on infinitely. All right, so the first page is going to be like what the general like look of the place is. The second 2 pages are going to be some like additional mechanical things. These 2 pages are going to be these locations, and then just continuing that for 14 pages. And now you have a zine. And I wish I could say there was like you were mentioning earlier, Cosmo tips for what makes it. But really it is like you have the idea, now fit that idea into 14 pages.
You told me a page, a story about how Cess and Citadel kind of formed in the car, I think it was. I love for the listeners to hear that story, because I'm like, all right, now I'm sold on this book. Just give it to me.
Yeah, it was literally the car ride to Gen Con of 1 year, and the creator of this is going to be a weird specific deep cut, but so Cyberpunk 2077 is coming out. I don't really have any like particular love for it, but it's like, oh yeah, they've been working on that for a couple of years. And then the CEO goes on to make like $1 billion because he's, you know, the head of CD Projekt Red and Good Old Games, so on and so forth, and has the audacity while working on the Cyberpunk 2077 game to say like, well, I mean, like not all billionaires are really like monsters. Like, you know, I don't think they're necessarily endemic of a much larger problem, as he's working on a Cyberpunk game. And that was, well, enough fuel for me to rant for like 9 hours to my poor creative partner, Alex, and also to create a 250-page book that would inevitably go on to win an ENNIE. So I sometimes your idea is 14 pages long, sometimes it's 250.
It literally shows the billionaires as monsters. What I really love about Cess more than anything is whether it's the artifacts, the monsters, the spells, that they're hyper specific to the setting. And I think that's been a trend, at least in the OSR scene all along, to really focus on a very particular idea and give it form. So when I learned that, okay, we need a hyper-specific, disgusting city monsters that are representations of capitalism, I'm like, I'm in.
Yes. Well, like capitalism and pollution and like, I mean, the other thing is like, and I've softened up on them, but for a long period of my life, I despised cities. I hated everything about them, and I still think they are meat grinders that exist to extract as much money out of you as possible. But I have grown to see that, like, you know, also they are bastions of community. They are, you know, places where like not just a single thing is happening, but things upon things upon things are happening. And it just happens to be a place where a lot of people are, and the rent's too high.
It is way too high, yes. As somebody who lives in the city, the rent is terrible.
Which one, out of curiosity?
Boston.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, where every crosswalk is like an ancient and very specific sigil to some sort of like weird abstract expressionist.
Dunkin' Donuts.
Like
I mean, speaking about cities in particular, and I don't, you know, like you have gone through a whole video that explains this, but I would love for the very brief version of how you build a city in Cess, because we were talking to Meldar Games last, and they were talking about like on when she draws maps, one of her methods is to use a rice method where you like throw rice and draw around it, and it's what I was delighted to find that like that's a large function of how you create factions and cities in Cess.
Yes, I start with the faction relationships. Like I start with the people, and it can go a little back and forth of like, the reason factions exist is because that there is like some sort of like, building infrastructure that they sort of congregate at. But in the idea of like what I think is the most interesting part to start with and therefore influence the rest of the city, I prefer to start with who is in charge or, trying to be in charge, and how do they interact with the other various levels inside the city. And then from there, it's a matter of like building out the various block by block locations, the various neighborhoods, districts, so on and so forth. But ultimately, it starts with who's living in that city and how do they interact with each other.
I love that, because so often in fantasy settings, people I think try to like force like, oh, this is the city that does like all the mining and stuff. And it's like, okay, but do we really care about mining, or do we care about the people who are actually there and like interacting and being messy and political and all that?
I mean, as anyone who's like worked in like a blue collar job, even these jobs where it's like we do one thing and it's drudgery, there are factions inside of those buildings. There's, the foremans who like miraculously show up with like a new car every other month. That's fun. Meanwhile, you have like the two groups of workers that just despise each other and will never get along. Just extrapolating that into the size of a city.
It comes back to the randomness being so important, I think, in OSR games. Like you talk about, in Cess, you mentioned like the toy box and the idea of like you have all these tools to build stuff. And if we don't do these random exercises, like throwing the dice and then drawing these connections and then like having to rationalize why they're connected, we won't come up with these like really interesting ideas. We'll end up with the same, like Courtney was saying, the same, like all the mining people are in the mining district.
And I think now it's very funny you say that. And like, I see the OSR like neon light in the background and it's, but like, I think you are definitely touching on a very, very deep philosophy of the OSR, which is, it is an exercise in randomness. In turn, that chaos is kind of a little more fair. And by building a world that is like kind of chaotic and random and is not really, shall we say, dressed up or presented for the players to kind of like, I don't want to say have a story in, but have a book written for them that they're just like playing the beats out. Instead, having it as this like big kind of chaotic thing that if you push this lever, this thing collapses, which will then cause these two levers to open up and so on and so forth. And by being a referee and a game master, building out a world like this and kind of thinking about the world more of this in more of sort of a random way that you can live within, I think that ends up being a way more fun thing to play. And other people have written much more about this in much more academic fashions, but I will say from both refereeing and playing, it feels like a much more ethical way to run and play a game.
You mentioned in a video you want the referee to play as much as the players, and part of that is not presenting this pre-made settings, and the GM isn't really playing in the sandbox with the toys as much as the players are.
Yes, because it's fun.
You must hate Powered by the Apocalypse then.
I don't hate it, but it is so different to the way that like I usually run games. I have played a couple of games and I've enjoyed them thoroughly.
As a player or as GM?
Not a GM, only as a player. As a GM, I wonder what that would look like.
With PBTA, it's something about like there is a messiness, but it seems like the world isn't really out there in the way the OSR is. Like the world is out there in the OSR, but it's also like really messy and random. But in PBTA, it's not really out there because we're making it as we go, sort of through the story. So I can see like there's like overlap, but at the same time, it also rubs me the wrong way too sometimes.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if we can go down this little like Powered by the Apocalypse tangent. And so the Brindlewood Bay system, which is sort of like I think is technically sort of like connected to it after a fashion, or at least like mechanically part of the Brindlewood Bay system, a game I have been wanting to play for a very long time, is public access. And the reason for that is actually, it is still like kind of like a big, messy, chaotic world, like not necessarily in the OSR way. Both the players and the referees are building this story together in a way that like once you are willing to do that, I think is like something kind of like truly magical and also kind of cuts to the core of what role-playing games are about. We're all here to sort of like play in this magic circle and make up a world. And why shouldn't the players kind of have like a say in that And, we sort of build these like mechanics to allow that to happen in a fun and interesting way. So actually, yeah, no, I don't hate Powered by the Apocalypse. It's admittedly just like, I don't really know how to write for it. And I know what I write and I like what I write.
Well, one of the things I love about our system, OSR Plus, is that in session 0, there's a huge focus on that collaboration of creating the world together. And even though the GM will show up with a deck and have factions in mind, it's really the players that then flesh that out. And I feel like that's kind of like what you're doing in Cess and the Citadel. You're creating these problems for yourself and kind of navigating how they intertwine and react against each other. And that's like, it just sounds like a very cool approach. Like I'm now like, well, shit, I want to start a new campaign.
I know. I want to do a city crawl kind of campaign and set up the factions with the dice method in there. And then we can tack session 0 on top of that, because we would come in with this randomized stuff, and maybe we could all do it together, rolling, and then we would figure it out together. Because like that is pretty neat to just see it visually laid out, and then you draw the lines and move the dice away, and then we got to rationalize the connections.
I will say my book is meant to be used like alongside other stuff, so please feel free, and also let me know how it goes, because that sounds really fun.
Because we watched what was it, Arcane, right, a while ago, and I'm so far behind, so this is me catching up to that cartoon.
Catching fun again. Yeah.
Because Courtney's like, you should have watched this like years ago. But anyway, I watched it and it was like, oh, what if we did like an open world kind of like city campaign where different tables can jump in and out? But I don't want to have to like flesh out a city at all. I'd rather just take something like this. We figure out the scope of it together, and then we go in and explore those areas with the different GMs. That would be kind of cool, because we don't want it to be like you go from hex to hex and like the world doesn't exist yet. We want to like lay the world out to some degree, then go from hex to hex, then use some random tables to see what's in the hexes we establish, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and like as a forever player, I swear I'm gonna run a game at some point. But as a player, I do really like being involved in that process too, of like getting to describe things and come up with my own like takes on factions or interesting places or what have you. I think it helps like pull the players in and make them more connected to the setting instead of just plopping down a pre-made in front of them.
Back to public access, like rubbing away some of the hard lines between the referees and the players, because ultimately like it's just a magic circle that we're all playing in that we kind of like decide on. There's no reason that the players shouldn't have a say in sort of what this world that they're going to play in is. It's just for some reason it's been kind of built out in such a fashion that it's not, well, except for the Traveler stuff. It's also a game where the character creation is a game in and of itself.
You can die, right?
Yeah, you can die right in like character creation. So
okay.
There's an interview, Luke Gearing did an interview with one of the writers of Traveler, and he explained like, well, that's kind of part of the process, is like we sit down to play this game, and then when we like do these, create our characters, and then the character dies in character creation, that is still drama after a fashion of us narrating the stories of these characters, and then kind of as a bonus, oh, well, you get to roll a new one, and we get to kind of like talk about that and have fun with that. And then the next week we get to actually play. I don't know. It was like, I remember listening to that and I still think of that.
The dead character creation adds to the world. Like now we can refer to that in our next pass, making a character. Like maybe they're related to the rest of the story, and why they died is important. And those kind of questions could arise as a result.
And especially like seeing you pull your art into the creative setting creation process, and like your, what was it, Scratchpad brainstorming that you do.
Yes.
Love to see stuff like that.
I actually highly recommend it for everyone. It popped up in the comments, and I get it all the time, where it's like, oh, this isn't doodles, this is art. And it's like, well, that's not the point. The point is to, even if you don't draw for a living, even if you would claim you're not really good at it, I think thinking about this stuff visually and like, putting these doodles down alongside the art is actually incredibly helpful, not just for making adventures, but for, I would say, many creative processes.
And I guess on the note of like collaborating with your players and coming up with things, and tying back to that Scratchpad brainstorming, have you seen that done as like a group, like drawing together to come up with a world or to come up with a setting? Or
at art school, yes. Like I went to art school, so that was like kind of part of it, is like at some points the best nights are when we would all just like sit together and like draw. Which
school, if you don't mind me asking?
Pennsylvania College of Art and Design.
Oh, okay. I went to Mass College of Art and Design.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Wow. We'll have to get a coffee sometime, share stories. Never been hungrier in my life. Yeah, so like the Scratchpad thing is like, it's admittedly for myself, it's a very fun way to put this stuff down and get it on paper. But I think also just having this like big sheet of like communal paper for everyone to like, draw on, work on, come up with things, put like little visual imagery. It doesn't happen very often, at least not as much as I would like. But when it does, it's like kind of like a magical little thing that happens. At the end of it, you have this like kind of precious little artifact of all these doodles that everyone took the time to sit down to work on.
For you in particular, how has your own style developed over time? Like you have this really nice high contrast line art style. Is it something that you went in that direction purposefully, or did you experiment a lot and just settle there?
I had a lot of trouble in art school my craft was not there. In the sense of and I think it was just like I was too busy. My adult ADHD was coming in. Also, I'm starving, I'm broke. Anyway, as much as I pushed myself, I couldn't really get that high fidelity that I was like looking for with like oil painting or high detailed etching. I was also looking at artists who had been doing this for careers, and I was, maybe on my third, fourth year of college, and it just wasn't up to snuff. I started paying really good attention to what would make a good composition, because if I could at least make a good composition, I wouldn't have to focus as much on all the rendering, all the details, all the getting the light just right. I could just focus on the contrast, I could focus on the composition, and then it would be done, and then I could move on to the next class that I had to do work for or whatever. I kept with that, and it ended up helping out a lot with being able to like churn out a lot of work. I wasn't worrying too much about the fidelity of things. I was worrying about just like, does it have impact? And if so, what is the bare minimum that it needs to get it out? Years down the line that I have actually I have time to practice. I have time to like work on the craft. I'm actually shifting my focus to taking a lot more time to work on my artwork, to get it up to something that like isn't just good enough and works, but is something that like I'm proud of, something that I don't want to say like worry about my legacy, because it's a little less that, but I would rather start making artwork that I'm proud of than was good enough. And unfortunately, that takes a lot more time. That's how I kind of developed that style. It was a survival mechanism after a fashion, and now I'm trying to bring it up more than that.
A similar question about your graphic design process, your layouts, because do you do all of the design for Feral Indie?
Alex and I like kind of bounce back and forth. I would say when it comes to like layout and graphic design, I do tend to do a little more of that, because same thing as before, contrast composition.
I've definitely noticed like the high contrast style for your covers, and Daniel brought up the bright pink of, it's like so eye-catching and so cool. Was that a similar thing about like creating something eye-catching relatively quickly? Is that why you decided to go in that direction, or as opposed to like a more traditional kind of fantasy style that you would think of with D&D and that sort of design?
I actually really dislike the direction a lot of D&D artwork is going nowadays. It is, I saw nods from everyone. I
think we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, it is entirely too polished now. And I can say that with the 3.5 Monster Manual and Player's Handbooks on my shelves right there that I still love to this day, right next to the 5th edition ones that I'm not a fan of. It has nothing to do with the artists that are working on it. It is purely the choice of art direction they're taking it. It is far too polished. It leaves absolutely no like texture for sort of artistic expression. Doesn't feel fun. Fun's not the right word. I prefer the term textured.
It's not evocative, I guess. Like that's my feeling. Like I when I look at the 5e art, or even though I think Daggerheart's a pretty cool system, like it's so slick, the appearance of the art. It's like, what are you communicating to me? Like other than this is AAA quality art, like in that sense. Whereas like I look at something in here, like there's some sense of communication as to what is this telling us, Courtney, when we look at this picture, more than the 5e tells us.
Yes.
I love those Reddit posts where they have like a monster over the different editions of D&D, and it just shows like the different art style of each one. It's just like cool to see that. Yeah. But it's like you said, 3 is always like something that's like really well done, but still something that is left to chew on, and it's not just this like
almost like photorealistic thing. Yeah.
Unfortunately, like I don't want to malign the artist, because it really isn't that. It is this, this isn't just like a fantasy game that like people are making art for. Like now this is D&D. This is D&D. D&D has to look like D&D. A beholder has to look like this, a mind flayer has to look like this. And your art has to be good enough to be in the D&D book. We're not going to pay you any better than a lot of other places, but you know, it has to be. The question was, for the city one specifically, it was because I thought cities, and I still do, are loud, aggressive, and so I picked the loudest, most aggressive color that I could.
I mean, it got me to buy it. I looked at all the books. I'm like, I don't, what's this one I asked you? And you're like, oh, well, that's the one I made. I'm like, well, I want it because it's pink. For the explanation.
So we're working on our 3rd book into series, and it's the 4th book. And if, Courtney, you'll understand this, the 4 books that we have now will actually be in CMYK, and that's just a fun little joke for us. Actually, this book that we're coming out with now, the colors are much more subtle, they're much more muted. The color this time is sort of blue and green.
Hence the ocean.
The ocean is blue and green, and gray and wet and cold.
Do you just throw some microplastics in the book as well, just to, you know, make
They're not around yet. They're not around yet. We didn't want to do Vikings. We didn't want to do pirates. We didn't want to do, you know, we wanted to do something that was at least closer both geographically and also within like at least the consciousness of like Alex and I. And so we went with the whaling industry and of like Nantucket. We did a pitiful tour of New England. I can send you, if anybody ever wants a list of like places not to go if they're doing a research trip, well, except for the Whaling Museum. The Whaling Museum was horrific and incredible because it was like, oh, this is everything that we need. But then as far as the actual like location geography went, it was total bust. But then I ended up going to Iceland during the winter, and that made up for it. So,
and this is a full book, or is this another zine?
This is a book. The current page count is 208, although that is probably going to bloom towards, I want to say 250, 280.
Are there any other works on the boilerplate here?
I have not done any promotion for this whatsoever because I've been busy with it, and it kind of like crept up on me, but I'm putting together an adventure. It is called Mildew and Silver, and it is written specifically for old school essentials because I got to talking with Gavin of Necrotic Gnome. It was very interesting because on one hand, it's like, oh my God, like you're the creator of like Dolmenwood and all this. And then as we got talking, it was like, oh yeah, we both used to have like Google Plus accounts, and we would like, I remember when you were making Wormskin and like when these were all blog posts. I remember when my stuff was blog posts, and now we have booths and we're doing interviews, and it's we're both very fortunate in that respect. But I normally do not do stuff for systems specific. This one felt right, and it's all about a crumbling dwarven mining town. I think I'll leave it at that.
You get to play dwarves?
Well, you can play as dwarves.
I wouldn't mind an adventure where we all just play dwarves. Wouldn't that be kind of, it's like Klingon, adventure?
Anyway, yes. So I'm currently writing an adventure. It's called Mildew and Silver. It will be released as part of OSE month this May. It is a first level adventure, and also it's not system neutral, but I'm gonna damn well make sure most of it can be used for just about any system.
Well, speaking of creating things, we should get on to our adventure hook. But right before then, we like to do some quick rapid fire questions, just a quick round. So,
in your experience of playing RPGs, what has been your most fun failure in a campaign?
The best failure I had, I was playing, I think, Lair of the Lamb God, which is by, I believe, Goblin Punch Games. It was one of these like funnel style dungeons where we're trying to like escape this like big horrible monster that's chasing us while there's traps, but then also additional monsters and kind of like weird ways to exploit the dungeon. We never made it that far because I remember at one point, one of my characters there was a big acid trap that we had activated. The monster is coming for us, and so we think to ourselves, it's like, we'll just use the acid on that. Haha, brilliant, we've done it. We've broken this game. And I end up like doing this big speech to this one character about how, like, well, if you die, like, don't worry, it doesn't get better. And so I convinced this other character to use themselves as bait for the big monster so that they could step on the pressure plate to drop the acid on the monster without even thinking that, oh, well, it's out of acid now. So the monster just runs across the plate, no acid comes out, devours, I think, one or two of us or something like that. And that I remember just howling with laughter.
Of all the gonzo things you put on paper, what's been the most wild and like you just dove into? And how did that come about?
Vast in the Dark was one of those things that just kind of spilled out very quickly and rapidly and then took off. Of just like, I just wanted to make something for Zine Month that was like kind of fun, of like, oh, well, what if it's just like a big, scary, brutalist nightmare realm that extends forever, and then there are like, big monster creatures, and then I can also put this fun little mechanical thing of like building the world with zero prep into it. I just did the second print run of that last month. So I think that was it. It's unfortunately scary gonzo, not like fun gonzo. Like that one feels the least fun out of all the titles I've done. Like, oh, Book of Gob. That was the best. That was it. I got to be one of the collaborators for the Book of Gob project by Lost Pages. It remains one of my favorite projects that I've ever like collaborated on. I got to not only do the writing, I got to do some like artwork for it. Honestly, I think they gave me too much freedom because I then got to design like the sigil that is on the cover of the book. And I had so much fun because it was with like all my friends.
Final question I have, I ask this of every designer, and it's the Cosmo question. It is, what is your number one brief imperative piece of advice for fledgling game designers who are just embarking on trying to make a role-playing game or an adventure for themselves?
I will copy ZXCO in this and say, write what you know. Every writer says that. Write what you know. Write about home. Write what is close to you. Write what you are intimate with. Write what you understand. I am simply parodying that, but I also truly believe that.
This time we're going to try a little something different. We're going to go gonzo ourselves with the adventure hook, and we're going to build it on the fly.
Whoever has a D8, we're going to roll a D8, and that will determine our adventure hook.
I got a 5.
A 5. All right. So this adventure hook reads as follows. A secret library contains books describing events that have not happened yet, and one of them details the party's imminent death. So this adventure hook has 3 facts about the world that we have to incorporate and work with. The first one is the books update themselves as events change. Number 2, removing a book from the library causes reality to shift. And number 3, the librarians refuse to explain where the books come from. So what do we think about that premise to begin with? Just throwing some thoughts out there and then he'll guide us.
I mean, I'm already thinking of who here is familiar with the Stygian Library?
I almost saw a hard copy. Indie Press Revolution had one, and I went to go grab it, and then I walked away, and it was gone.
Aww.
Depending upon the year, that might have been us.
What is the Stygian Library?
So it is by ENNIE Allen, goes by Cave Girl. It is a toolbox for running a infinitely spanning sort of like dimensional library. This is like, I would say, gold standard for like what I think a toolbox book would be about. Not only that, it's labeled very well and is nice and compact. Yeah, so fortunately my brain is stuck on that. I mean, I do love like a library of the dead.
My first thought is jumping to the last tenet of this prompt, and then that's the librarians not being forthcoming about where the books come from. So I kind of wonder, what are the librarians like? Are they robots? Are they like ghosts? Are they there's something about them that would keep their mouths shut, so to speak?
You went with the dead theme. Are they like necromancers? Are they undead?
I'm thinking to the book Annihilation, in which there's an entity in a tower that is very mysterious and is constantly like writing things on the wall, and you end up finding out like what this creature is in the end. But I could see it being something like that, like where it's this things that have been warped over time, maybe even by the library itself, into beings that no longer really like communicate normally, or like can't communicate normally.
Or by staying in the library, they have escaped their fate, but are now cursed to be servants of the library.
So it attracts people into it, and then they become its servants.
They're like NPCs.
Spider web.
So these were once people, these attendants of the library is what we're saying. We may not know what they are yet, but they're attendants in some kind that were pulled in.
So what keeps them from talking about the books though? Is it the library itself? Is it like punitive? Or is it?
You can't talk in a library. You have to be quiet.
Oh, is it magical? Like they literally can't talk?
Maybe, because I mean, you saying the spider web got me thinking about like, oh, what if their mouths are like literally like sealing shut over time or something?
Of course, Courtney introduces the fuck
Of
up.
course, I gotta do body horror.
Do like that. Yeah, well, it's to kind of like John's line of thought, like are they servants? Are they masters? Are they servants who believe they're masters? But I do like the idea of the mouths disappearing over time.
That's canon now. Yeah, the mouths are web shut.
Great.
Well, maybe the way of bridging that is perhaps they had the intent of mastery, but then by getting into the library, they become servants. So there could be people seeking knowledge who then, get trapped in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea that because the books describe events that don't happen. So maybe they either tried to go against that and became locked into it, or they read too far into it. And it basically just like, it's like, becomes, they become part of the cycle. Yeah.
So what are people seeking when they go towards this library?
If the events haven't happened, well, now I'm thinking of, I think A Short Stay in Hell, where every book, every word and every combination of words that could have ever been written is written.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost like a little too random in the case of this.
And that could be interesting if every book, if the reason why there are events that haven't happened yet is because it has every book of every possibility that could have happened.
Oh, yes. It's just, unfortunately, there's no way to focus it. And so if a random person just walks through there, they're just sort of like scattershotting. It's like, okay, well, I could be dead tomorrow, or I could inherit a vast fortune from a unknown uncle or whatnot. But yeah, like what is that called? Like Schrodinger's cat library.
What genre is this adventure?
I mean, the mouths are already sealing up. I would say it's
dark fantasy. Dark fantasy.
Are we interested in dark fantasy or horror?
I've done so much horror. And I've been watching Conan recently, so
nice.
Dark fantasy. All right. Okay, so that's my first question there. So it sounds like, just to recap some of our thoughts here, people are drawn to this library for seeking some sort of knowledge, likely because this library is a Schrodinger's box of every possible event that could happen. But when they get there, that mastery gets turned into servitude in some way, and they're transformed, and their mouths get all spidery, and this library has a magical silence that prevents them from speaking, on top of the fact that they can't open their mouths.
Second part is not everyone. That doesn't happen to everyone, but it happens to the people that are locked in there. Either they flew too closely to the sun, or something happened, and maybe we don't know what that is, and that's one of the adventures that could happen to them.
We know the party is doomed to die. So is that because it says removing a book from the library causes reality to shift? How would the party know about their imminent death? I'm imagining a book must have been removed from the library that has that information. Like, what's our impetus to get the party into the library? And how do they know that they have an imminent death?
That could be part of the magic of the library, is all the possibilities exist within the library, but they are only made real when they exit the library.
Oh, neat. Okay, because that's the reality shifting. It crystallizes it, which would explain the servants, because maybe they're trying to get a certain outcome to become real. If they can find that outcome and pull the book out, now it's real, right? Because reality shifts.
Or the outcome was brought out while they were still in the library, thus negating their existence while still existing in the library.
Love it.
Yeah. I know, yeah.
Okay, so I think we have a general sense of the structure here. So the next question I have for us is, what's the overall goal for the party, the players? We know they're clearly trying to stop their deaths, but is there other goals that they're trying to solve for?
Well, I think it would be a chain reaction then, that if the books update themselves, that they were trying to like do things to change the books. Like, so like, do you have to change one book to change another book to change is it interact that way, or is it there's just one book about the party and they're just trying to?
So let's say the book of their death has come out of the library. So that is now the reality. If that book goes back in the library, that reality no longer exists and they are safe. However, they could push it a little bit further. An extra treasure could be if you can locate a book that contains let's find the book that we get vast quantities of wealth or something like that. Or maybe we can turn this back on the enemy that brought this book out that would have caused our deaths. The problem is we need to find that book in an infinite library that, you know, is constantly changing, and the books are constantly changing. So not only do we have to find the book that is going to help us, before that, we have to find the way to find the book.
And avoid the possibility of being trapped, because apparently this happens to people.
Yeah.
So it's a question then of, is the party going to reach too far? Because it seems like their goal is to save themselves by undoing this reality, but the party members might be tempted to reach for more.
Maybe in saving themselves, maybe they have to somehow change events in the world to draw another party in.
Oh.
Yeah.
That book has to go in and another book has to come out.
Go out. Yeah, they take out a book.
So is there like a rival party out there? Maybe they're the ones who originally took the book out, and so that's the ones you're going to swap with.
If you can find it, that's the shtick. Is and then you could get some like deep lore with it, where it's like, yes, there will always be 7 books from this library in the world. There must always be 7.
Something about this is giving me like ancient Greek, like defying fate, but then ending up like sealing your own fate kind of vibes. Like they're trying to prevent their destruction, but in the end, like they're most likely going to destroy themselves.
So we have a general premise for what the players are about. In OSR Plus, we have a concept called archetypes. So what that means is players have their classes and their kits and all their generic, fantasy stuff, but they also have a narrative role they fill. So if this was like, a Greek mythology adventure, you might have like the golden boy or the lover, like something that ties into the narrative you're going to run. So for our players, what archetypes do we imagine them adopting in this setting or in this world that will drive the narrative we want to tell? We need about 6 of them. I'll take notes.
I'm trying to think how to make this an archetype. I think it'd be interesting to have a blind person. Like I wouldn't say illiterate at first, but that's a little bit too harsh, I think. I think someone that the books are going to have less of an effect, so to speak, because they can't take it upon themselves.
So someone who's lacking a faculty that's actually a boon is kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, like
in this world.
They're enhanced in a different way.
Clean.
Oh, the clean. I like that. So their disability in the real world is somehow an advantage in this world.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a disability. It could also be just like that sort of like small comical thing of it's like they speak 2 languages but only read the one. We'll take it in the fantasy setting, like they're illiterate, but it's not because they're like any dumber. It's just because it's like, well, that didn't help move bricks.
Wasn't necessary. I was also thinking something like they were deaf, like they would know sign language, and that might help. It's a hard one to do archetypes for.
Well, what is, I guess the question becomes then, what is this setting about, like thematically? It seems to be about knowledge and destiny, at least, right? And avoiding fate. It may be a little bit about seeking forbidden knowledge or the forbidden fruit, because you're grabbing things you shouldn't be grabbing for. So if that's the kind of setting or the themes we're going for, what roles are players going to adopt to advance that?
Definitely the scholar.
Yeah.
Someone who is at least aware and capable of like understanding some of like the sort of like higher concepts that are at play.
Maybe the opposite of that too. Someone who wants to destroy knowledge.
Like a book burner. I also think someone like Biff from Back to the Future that wants to game the system and wants to become rich, like the greedy.
The greedy one got it. The greedy got it. It mirrors the clean and the greedy,
Yeah. So, and I think the clean is like they're trying to fix their whatever's holding them back. Like that's why they're there.
And then they realize that it's actually a virtue in this world, which is interesting.
So I'm just thinking of the 1999 Brendan Fraser classic, The Mummy, with this, because there's the scholar, there's the greedy, there's like the ruffian kind of mercenary type. So maybe not book smart, but knows how to get around.
Paid on the behalf of someone else to be there.
The brute, I would say also, if you got room for one more, the doomed, someone who is either fated to be sort of like lost to this place or is ready to be the one to, whether or not they do is kind of like, suspect, but that's like mechanically what they're about. But
I like the idea of it's someone like, because we're kind of doing these like polar opposites, that the ruffian is sent there, as a mercenary, but the doomed is sent there as a sacrifice, so to speak. Like they drew the shortest straw of their village and were sent there to.
You could even frame, if you wanted to get the ruffian to be more thematic, you could frame them as the free, because in a sense they were hired to do this, but they're not beholden by fate to So that will give them a little bit more room to structure that character differently than otherwise being a fighter. Okay, so we have 6. We've got the clean, the scholar, the book burner, the greedy, the ruffian, and the doomed. So that's pretty cool for our archetypes. All right, so now we know what the players are doing. We know the narrative roles they fill. What are some locations in this adventure that they can go to? I always refer back to Justin Alexander, my personal hero, who developed node-based adventure design. So I think of these as like the nodes that the players can bounce from as they explore the sandbox. And they can be events or locations. They can be, individual NPCs, things they encounter and can explore as part of it.
Home as one. Either the space between the dungeon itself, or like I always refer to it as the wilderness. And then for the dungeon itself, like I always use the kind of like 5-room archetype of there's the threshold / entrance, the atrium,
Like a vault.
Yeah, the vault, the boss room. Other one is like the secret room.
Well, that could be the vault, the secret room. And so I could say like maybe the vault is the secret room and the lair is the boss's room.
Boss battle, it's the card catalog room where you fight Dewey the Decimator.
Jesus. You had that in the chamber for a while, didn't you? Like,
Yeah, it was just waiting, rattling. This is rattling.
Well, say we work with that structure you just laid out. How do we, if we had that 5 item, I have 4 here, but the 5 item structure in the dungeon, the wilderness and home, how would do we want to flavor those in the spirit of this particular library? I mean, a card catalog is not a bad idea. I could see that being one of the
actual room. Yes,
things.
Yeah, and I think for a boss room, jokes aside, I think the idea, because I think that's where the key is to help you find the books would be.
Oh yeah, because that is the shtick, is you have to find the place that the book has to go, potentially find another book to pull out.
Yeah, I could see it being very like puzzle oriented, given that the librarians won't or can't talk to you and are probably trying to hide their knowledge in some way.
I think it also, if we need a 5th room, some sort of cafe or something would be interesting. And that is the one spot where the silent spell isn't.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's like you can like run to like talk, and then you have to like, it's like
It's a downtime space and a resting.
Yeah, it's kind of downtime space. It's a safe harbor of some sort too.
Maybe it's not a spell even. Maybe it's like there's just a risk that you will attract the librarian's attention if you make too much noise.
I like that.
So like you have to really like limit how much you speak out loud. Otherwise, you could like round a corner and there's just going to be like a wall of these creepy, mouthless librarians standing there.
That or something else. Like, well, in the sense that it's like the librarians are trying to keep you quiet and will kill you to keep you quiet because they don't want you to attract the other thing, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Maybe that enforces a certain fate and finality in the place like a monster. But what you guys are talking about, I think, is really neat, is that the possibility that there could be a mechanic on top of this that determines the degree to which you might become a librarian. So like you're saying, perhaps speaking too much starts, or John was saying, it starts to form your mouth closing. So I could see a sort of stress mechanic in this game. And that's how librarians are made. They become too boisterous and they say too much. Which
does make the cafe kind of an essential safe point.
Okay, so how do we feel about this? We've got home, wilderness. We have the 5 pieces of the dungeon, card catalog, cafe. We got the place where the boss actually is. Actually, so that leads into my next question then, like, who is the boss? What is the antagonist in this adventure?
Fate itself.
Right.
Yeah. Like,
is it the thing that gets called by the librarians?
I keep going back to the spider concept. So I think that there is some sort of like crazy large beast of sorts, that is not of beast intelligence.
Yeah, and it's attracted to noise, and it can't read, but it absorbs knowledge by hearing. So that's why they want it silent at all times, so that this thing won't appear and start soaking up the knowledge.
Is it eating the library? Very
gradually, as you make more noise, like it consumes more.
It could be also, it's like, all right, so let's say this spider is the physical personification of like fate itself, this big horrible monstrous spider. Go old Greek with it, where it's like it literally would spin fate from its webs and stuff, but that is not a form that is conducive to mortals. So the library takes the form of the library because that is what is conducive to mortals, to understanding and reading the fates. But for The spider sort of sits almost above that. Like it reads from these strings and then has kind of allowed them to sort of composite into the shape of this books and libraries and stuff like that. But it's keyed into something higher.
Like it doesn't disguise its true form. So when you confront it, you confront what it actually is, as opposed to like the form of the library.
Yes.
I like that a lot.
Horrifying. Like,
So we've got our antagonists, our locations, our archetypes, player goal, genre. So the next thing is we have to fuck it up with a twist. So in your case, we're going to use your book for the twist, as opposed to our tables that we normally do. So I'm going to need a D4 because we're going to introduce to this. And now the thing we roll, we're going to take like metaphorically. It doesn't have to be literal because Assassin's Citadel is very specific to cities. But we'll take the spirit of it. So we're going to roll between factions, artifacts, monsters, and locations from Assassin's Citadel. So we'll need a D4 to determine which one we're going to add.
I got a 1.
Oh, factions. All right. So I'm going to open the book here and go to page 60. And the next roll is a D20, ignoring 19 and 18.
I got a 12.
12. Perfect. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, okay. So I have Mage Cabal from Assassin's Citadel. It says, the most
excellent.
powerful and dangerous loci of magical powers gathered and bound by a common interest.
Do you want them in the library or outside of it? I mean, yeah.
Oh, I kind of like the idea of outside the library. Like maybe that's what happens in the wilderness to set the fate into the library itself. Like, you know, like the home is like session 0. And then that's the wilderness travels is somehow brings the band together.
What are they about? Like, are they opposed to the library? Are they in league with it? What's the situation?
Well, I imagine it's one of those things where like they all gathered together for the sort of vagueness of like, oh, well, we're going to the library and everyone's got their own take on it, whether it's like for just the scholarly approach or the, some sort of like kind of idea of like conquest that by like exploring it, we're sort of making it ours, or people who think it's an abomination, or so on and so forth. But since the library can kind of protect itself, the fighting hasn't really like started outside because it's already like a formidable force. The library is a force in and of itself. So you have factions within this faction, like just hanging outside of the library.
Is this like a perpetual convention that's camped outside of the library, like convention as in con? You know what I mean? Of different groups, the different fandoms of the library that represent the six archetypes.
Well, if they're camped out, I would say it's probably like maybe it's a moot where this happens every once in a while, where like somebody will find one of the books out in the world, and then that ends up like causing everyone to sort of like convene. Maybe you have like a couple of people that have built like permanent structures out by it, but they're kind of just sort of like nutty hermits. Like imagine somebody living at the convention, like in the vents in the hall, or like has built a small like shanty town like for themselves, and then something happens and now all of a sudden like all the mages show up to bicker or maybe make the plunge into it, which is probably why there's such a healthy supply of librarians in the library to begin with.
Yeah.
People torn from fate or corrupted to losing their mouth, or who knows what.
It makes me think of like all the crazy philosophy guilds in Planescape. Like I could imagine them being physically there.
Yes, yeah. Which what a great little place, like right outside the threshold of this kind of interdimensional space, and it's just packed with wizards. Like
I kind of like the idea of the library moving too, and they follow it like the Grateful Dead. They travel around. And
I prefer that actually. Like, because then you do have like the Grateful Dead. It's these wizards that like follow the library. Like,
well, I think we have done a bang up job. We have all the components of building an adventure based on our weird take on the Stygian. How do you say it? Stygian Library.
The
version
Stygian
of it.
Library.
Stygian Library.
If I'm not going to promote a whole I have trouble promoting my own stuff, but I will absolutely shill other people's stuff. Stygian Library, go buy it.
Well, Charlie, that was awesome. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us and let us into that wonderful brain of yours. Has anyone ever gotten a tattoo of your work?
I think someone has. I can't remember who, but I do believe. I know my tattoo artist has some of my old World War occult artwork. But then as far as actually myself, I can tell one person that has their own artwork. It's
there you go. All right. Where can we find you too out in the wild? What's Instagram and all that?
So I'm trying to move away from Instagram, but with that, I am trying to also get back into blogging on our website, feralindystudio.com. We also have a presence on DriveThruRPG. You just look up Feral Indie Studio. We're on there. Itch.io. I'd actually prefer if you buy on itch.io than DriveThruRPG. They don't take as much of a cut, and we have a little more control over stuff there. I would love to start putting more videos out on YouTube if I get the time and the chance, but for now, I'm working on my adventure Mildew and Silver, the book Into the Salt and Surf, and then I will also be working with Together Studios, Keith Baker and Jen Ellis, for a project called Night Market, which is going to be for Daggerheart. Yeah, so they're putting together a setting book for that, and I will be doing the art for it.
Will we see you at PAX Unplugged?
Yes, and God willing, this year we will have our own booth. One other thing I've always wanted to do at PAX Unplugged is there is one of the few Discord servers that I'm active on. I have a group of friends that got me into the OSR, create some of the coolest stuff. A lot of them worked on Book of Gob, and I would love to do something that we would call the Summit, where we all meet together at PAX Unplugged. And the problem is I would probably have to pay for like most of their airfare and like hotel rooms. So I gotta get the money together to do that. Like,
love it. Well, thanks again for taking the time. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me. And it was lovely talking to all of you.
You can follow us at OSR Plus on YouTube or join our Discord at osrplus.com. If you want to support us, visit our Patreon, patreon.com/OSR Plus for early access to our content and premium access to our digital tools. See you next time.